The island of Philae was always on the edge of ancient Egypt. It stood at the first cataract of the Nile, the foaming rapids that marked the traditional southern boundary of Egyptian civilization. Later, it became the southernmost frontier of the Roman Empire. Its temples, sponsored by a series of kings and emperors, were among the last to be built in Egypt. It was here, in the late 4th century, that the final hieroglyphic inscription was written. And it was here, during the reign of Justinian, that the last sanctuary dedicated to the Egyptian gods was closed. Thanks to the Aswan High Dam, the island of Philae is now underwater. Its temples, fortunately, were moved to a higher neighboring island where they can still be visited. Boats from Karnak land beside the oldest visible structure, the vestibule of Nectanebo I, built by one of the last native Egyptian pharaohs in the 4th century BC. Within is a courtyard flanked by 2 colonnades built under the Roman emperors. Above this window, behind the columns to our left, is a relief of Nero as pharaoh, making an offering to Horus and Isis. There are a series of small chapels along the right side of the courtyard, including one dedicated to Imhotep, the architect of the Step Pyramid, who came to be revered as a god of medicine. At the far side of the courtyard is the most important sanctuary at Philae, the Temple of Isis. Built by a series of Ptolemaic kings and embellished by the Roman emperors, this sanctuary was famous throughout the Mediterranean world. The Temple of Isis has a traditional design with pylons, a forecourt, and a hypostyle hall in front of the inner sanctuary. The first pylon in front of us was built by Ptolemy XII, father of the famous Cleopatra. He is shown in the guise of a pharaoh, smiting his enemies under the watchful eyes of Isis, Horus, and Hathor. The main portal, older than the rest of the pylon, still has graffiti left by Napoleon's men during their campaigns in Egypt. And there is the graffiti I was talking about. Moving now into the forecourt, we emerge here and find on the left side a mamisi, or birth house, a chapel commemorating the birth of a god, in this case Horus, though some of the reliefs inside also feature Ptolemy IV. The building was remodeled by the Romans, which is why Augustus appears with the harp-playing goddess Buto before Isis and Horus on the wall behind the colonnade. Ahead is the second pylon, which leads into the heart of the temple. Originally built on a natural rock outcropping, it stands at an angle to the first pylon. Though the gateway is older, most of the pylon, like the first, was built by Ptolemy XII, who appears with the gods in the reliefs on the facade. The hypostyle hall within is mostly the work of Ptolemy VIII, otherwise known as Ptolemy Psychon, Ptolemy the Pot-Bellied. As his nickname suggests, he was not an especially impressive figure, but he was a generous donor to the Temple of Isis and is shown here bestowing gifts on the gods. On the left side of the doorway into the inner sanctuary, a 19th century French tourist scratched his name, B. Muret. Below him, a less appreciative tourist put "Stultus est," is a fool. There's a much older inscription on this side, attesting to the sanctuary's conversion into a church in late antiquity. The sanctuary is the oldest part of the temple, built by Ptolemy II and Ptolemy III. It was here that the image of Isis was displayed, along with the bark, the sacred boat used to transport the goddess during festivals. The reliefs here are very well preserved. Leaving the temple, we come to the Gate of Hadrian, set in the wall that once enclosed the island. On the right side of the vestibule is this relief, which shows the origin of the Nile, its twin streams poured by Hapi from his cave. On the inside of the gate, Hadrian himself appears as pharaoh, among the gods over the lintel. I'll back up a bit to show that. On the wall, his successor Marcus Aurelius offers Isis flowers. A final curiosity is the graffito of Esmet Akum, dated August 21st, 394 AD, the last hieroglyphic inscription. A short distance from the Temple of Isis are the ruins of the Temple of Augustus. This was a small Roman-style temple with Corinthian columns, a rarity in this part of Egypt. It was set up by the prefect, the Roman governor, to honor the first emperor. Augustus was also responsible for the most distinctive structure at Philae, the so-called kiosk of Trajan. The purpose of this structure was almost certainly to shelter the sacred bark of Isis. Although it seems to have been roofed with timber, its decoration was never completed. It was only during the reign of Trajan, more than a century later, that a few reliefs were added to the south wall, showing Trajan making offerings to Isis and Horus, here on the edge of the empire, where Egypt came to an end.